It was an ordinary morning in Oshawa, Ontario. The sun had just begun its slow climb through a pale, overcast sky, the light muted by low clouds. The city stirred, distant sirens, tires on wet pavement, a hush over empty streets. By midday, life would resume with its usual urgency. But somewhere beneath that veneer of normalcy, something dark was unraveling. In August 2017, 18-year-old Rori Hache vanished. She was a teenager prized by those who knew her, unassuming, gentle, thoughtful. To her friends, she was quiet, introspective, someone who kept secrets, who didn't burden others with her fears. In the weeks before her disappearance, Rori confided in few. In the final days, she seemed withdrawn, tense, as though she sensed something closing in around her. The police alerted the community. Posters went up. "Have you seen Rori?" Her family held vigils. Days bled into weeks. Then on September 11, 2017, a fisherman walking the edge of the Oshawa harbour cast his net into the murky water and pulled up something that jolted him into shock: a severed torso afloat, rigid. Authorities confirmed this was human. This was Rori. The revelation exploded the case into national headlines. A missing girl would now become a crime scene. Months earlier, in 2008, another disappearance had haunted Oshawa. 19-year-old Kandis Fitzpatrick. One evening she left home and never returned. Her case went cold. Over time, hope dimmed, but her name lingered in the margins of unsolved files, murmurs of a ghost case. None suspected then that these two tragedies, separated by nearly a decade, would converge. The suspect who bridged them was Adam Strong, 47 at the time of his arrest. He lived quietly, or tried to, on McMillan Drive in a modest basement apartment. Law enforcement sources would later describe him as composed, controlled, almost clinical in his interactions. To his neighbors, he was a face in the crowd, unremarkable, polite. No one imagined the horrors beneath his threshold. On December 29, 2017, plumbers were called to Strong's residence. Residents had complained of clogged drains and foul smells. One of the plumbers began snaking the pipe. What came out was not simple sludge. It was flesh-like strips with hair. Something did not belong in these pipes. The men recoiled. They called 911. By the time officers arrived, the basement apartment had become a tomb of atrocities. In the freezer, in the walls, in the piping, evidence of human dismemberment. Remains of Rori were discovered, bones, tissues. Her DNA matched the young woman missing weeks earlier. The plumbing itself had become a repository of crime. But that was not all. In the same apartment, forensic experts found another shock: DNA belonging to Kandis Fitzpatrick. A large hunting knife bore traces. Walls and ceilings bore signs of violence. Blood patterns suggested a struggle. From the silent corridors of unsolved cases, her name now re-emerged. The initial investigation, methodical, DNA analysis, crime scene reconstruction, interviews with neighbors. Technicians cataloged every drop, every fiber, every pattern of spatter. But the case would hinge not just on physical evidence, but on the interrogation of the man who lived in that apartment. On November 8, 2018, at Durham Regional Police Headquarters, Detective Paul Mitten led an 11-hour interview with Strong. In the forensic interview room, the light was sterile, the silence heavy. Mitten used evidence-based techniques, rapport building, calibrated silence, open-ended questions. From transcripts and recordings, investigators later reconstructed the flow of that interrogation. Strong at first denied involvement. He insisted he knew nothing, but police presented him with the plumbing evidence, DNA matches, the freezer, and the knife. At key points, silence stretched. Then he began to concede small details, the dismemberment of Rori. He described the torso's discovery and expressed concern over how it looked in the water. Painstakingly, he admitted both young women had been in his apartment. He refused to testify at trial. At trial, the Crown argued that Rori had been killed by repeated blows to the head, while bound, in a sexual assault context, then dismembered to conceal evidence. Justice Joseph Di Luca would later call the crime planned and deliberate, convicting Strong of first-degree murder in Rory's death. Concerning Kandis, the court found that Strong had unlawfully caused her death, found guilty of manslaughter, but ruled that evidence was insufficient to meet the threshold for first-degree murder. The judge acknowledged that the crimes mirrored one another, but the decade-long gap and lack of direct forensic evidence for Kandis prevented a murder conviction. Then came what many thought impossible. In November 2021, Strong led investigators to Kandis' remains, once again illuminating the abyss between what is known and what is proof. Her body had been buried in Oshawa soil, unlocated for 13 years. The discovery reinforced the conviction that he was responsible, even if the court had hesitated to assign full murder charges. In May 2021, Strong was sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of parole for 25 years. His DNA was entered into the sex offender registry, and a court order forbade him from contacting the victims' families. Justice Di Luca, in his pronouncement, labeled Strong a dangerous predator, whose violence left 2 vulnerable lives destroyed. Yet for the families of Rory and Kandis, conviction did not mean closure. For years they had whispered in hope, scoured streets, and pressed police for answers. In court, Rory's father addressed Strong directly. "You, sir, have brought darkness to everyone." Kandis' father left the courtroom in disbelief when the first-degree verdict was not delivered. It is worth pausing to consider who Rory and Kandis were, beyond the headlines. Rory aspired to college. She had been pregnant and determined to keep her unborn child, according to some witnesses. She held dreams of escape, of independence. Kandis was a girl on the cusp of adulthood, her life derailed without reason. Their vulnerabilities, their trust in others, made them targets in Adam Strong's obsessive world. Strong's obsession was not sudden, it was methodical. The decade-long gap between the 2 crimes may suggest containment, but the common thread is striking. Both women known to Strong's environment, both taken to his inner sanctum. The plumbing, the freezer, the walls, every corner of that basement sealed in cruelty, yet also the avenue he believed would hide him. But when plumbers inadvertently snaked through that safe space, his design unraveled. The forensic timeline is crucial. Rory disappeared in August 2017. Her remains were discovered in September. The plumbers encountered the blockage in December, by which time Strong's attempt to flush evidence had already begun. That 3-month window became critical. DNA from Rory's remains was traced back to Strong's apartment. Blood identified on walls and ceiling. A hunting knife with Kandis' DNA. A tie-down device. A pet leash used as a restraint. During the interrogation, the detective's tactics became his tool. He transformed silence into discomfort, evidence into confrontation, letting Strong's own words implicate him. He did not push for an outright confession. Instead, he leveraged incremental admissions, weaving them into a coherent narrative that a judge could accept. In the judgment, Di Luca wrote that Strong had admitted to dismembering Hache, fixated on the torso's appearance, and confessed that both women had been in his apartment. Even after conviction, the case haunted Oshawa. In 2021, public reaction crowded courtrooms and news feeds. Some lambasted the leniency of the manslaughter verdict for Kandis. Others insisted the life sentence would ensure Strong would never harm again. The Hache family petitioned that the now infamous basement House of Horrors be demolished. They feared it would become a shrine for curiosity seekers. When the remains of Kandis were unearthed, the dust of uncertainty settled, but questions remained. Why had the court at the time of conviction declined a full murder verdict for her? Why had Strong's admissions, his own role in guiding police to the burial site, not shifted the legal ruling? The law demands proof beyond reasonable doubt. The damage, once done, cannot always be reversed. Through it all, the victims remain more than names. In family testimonies, archival footage, community vigils, their voices and faces persist in memory. Rory as a soft-spoken teenager brushed with fears, Kandis as a young woman whose future was stolen. Their lives intersected with a predator whose obsession turned deadly. There were moments in the investigation that felt surreal. A torn shoe crusted with blood, a wall stained in the corner of a room, a frozen body part stored like refuse, a basement where plumbing became the conduit for crime. Each discovery tightened the noose around Strong's facade of civility. In court, Strong never rose to testify. Defense counsel attempted to dismantle the Crown's case, to sow doubt in the forensic links, to question the admissibility of statements. The trial was judge alone, eliminating jury unpredictability. But the evidence proved relentless. The DNA, the physical remains, the confessions, the guided revelation of Kandis' burial, collectively they formed a narrative too compelling to reject. When sentencing came, the courtroom was hushed. The gravity of two lost young lives filled the room. The judge's voice weighed heavily. Strong was given life without parole for 25 years in Rori's murder, an 18-year sentence for the manslaughter of Kandis, running concurrently. The gravity of justice had been delivered, though imperfect. In the aftermath, investigators conducted reviews. They studied the interrogation methods, the timeline, the forensic trail. Some called the case a study in how methodical persistence, subtle questioning, and forensic science can intersect to catch even the most careful predators. Others cautioned, though solved, the scars remain. Oshawa, the city, would never quite be the same. The location of Strong's apartment became taboo. The families requested perpetual memorials. The justice community studied the case. In press conferences, the mother of Rori said softly, "It took a little bit from everybody." Today, the story stands resolved. Strong is in prison. Kandis' body lies far from the city, finally reclaimed by her mother's tears. Rori's unborn child gone. Two families remain in grief and memory. The files are closed in court, but the weight lingers. Yet even now, some investigators whisper, were Rori and Kandis truly the only ones? Were there others, names still lost, stories never unearthed, buried deep beneath the quiet streets of Oshawa? Because when one secret surfaces, another waits to rise. This is CaseCrypt Vault, where every shadow hides a story. Subscribe and keep your light on.